Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Maria of Rodial. Maria, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Cameron. Hello from sunny London.
Amazing. To kick things off, I'd like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
I grew up in a tiny island back in Greece, and my parents are not in the business world. They're both teachers. But since I was very young, I was super interested in fashion and beauty. And I remember since I was 8 years old, I would wait for my school to finish and once a month walk to the local newsagent that had all the international fashion magazines. And I used all my pocket money to buy Vogue and Harper's and all the amazing magazines and go back into my room and read them. And even though I was living in this tiny island, I had this massive imagination and trying to imagine myself where I wanted to be when I was older. So
Mm,
I've always been passionate about fashion and beauty, and I thought that that was going to be in my future.
I love it. So, where do you think some of that inspiration came? Maybe like any parents or siblings, cousins, or was that all just self-interest with those magazines?
It was mainly self-interest. It was something I craved. I was very creative since I was very young, and growing up in a tiny island where there was not a lot happening, it was dreaming about where my life could go. So yeah, that's where it all started.
So I saw you end up eventually going to Columbia Business School. I'm curious what led you to go in there, and then what did you study as well?
So first I studied, my first degree was in Greece where I studied English literature, but I was never going to be a teacher. So I was very drawn into the world of business. While I was at university, I took a freelance job in 17 magazine as a beauty writer.
Mm,
And again, that solidified my interest in beauty. But I was also very intrigued about business, and I knew business was somewhere in my future.
mm,
So I knew that when it comes to an MBA, a lot of people with career changes would go and then they move to a business career. So I thought that sounded
yeah.
interesting. I've done English literature and I've worked in a magazine. So
Mm,
I went there not knowing what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be in my life. I studied business for 2 years. And I just went there with an open mind. I didn't have any plan whatsoever.
mm. So I'm curious then if at that time, not sure kind of the avenue, but post graduation, then what did that end up taking you, and what route did you end up going after graduation?
So at that point, most of my classmates would either go into banking or consulting. These were the two main areas 25 years ago. There was no entrepreneurship, it was no tech. So all the exciting fields we have now were not available. So there were only two routes.
Mm,
So I interviewed with a whole bunch of companies, and surprisingly, I got a job offer to work in banking with a company called Salomon Brothers.
mm,
Um, and I was recruited to work in the London offices. So that brought me to London.
mm,
And the department I was in was corporate finance. So it was all about analyzing companies and understanding their strategies and what was driving their sales and how do we grow these companies. And it was an advisory department. So
mm,
it was super exciting. I was learning a lot about different industries. And even though, it wasn't something I wanted to do forever, it really gave me a lot of the structures and the understanding that I needed for when I started my own business a little bit
mm,
later on. But what happened was I was learning a lot and I was excited to even be included in such an amazing industry, which was back in the day.
mhm,
But then a couple of years into it, I started losing interest. And I felt I learned a lot, but I was going to work every day with a heavy heart.
Mm.
And towards the end of it, I just became a very bad employee. When you are in banking, you were supposed to work very late at night and sacrifice all your weekends. And I wasn't doing any of that. I was leaving on time. I wasn't working weekends.
Yeah.
And my team probably got the message that I've lost interest. And not surprisingly, one day I got fired.
Mm.
I was devastated as I was in my mid 20s, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me realize I didn't want to continue a career in banking. And that's when I started thinking about starting my own
Mm. So yeah, this is a really important piece of the journey here. Is this segue between the banking job to then Rodial? I'm curious, what did that transition period look like? How long was that until you kind of explored into skincare then?
So when I was fired, it took me a few months of just really doing absolutely nothing and trying to understand myself, trying to see where I want to be. And I would sort of wake up every morning and go to a museum or go for a walk. And I just really needed to take myself away from my day to day, and really understand what was driving me, what was going to be the one thing in my life that would make me happy at work. And I
Mm.
went back into the days when I was writing for 17 magazine, and a lot of the pieces I was writing were beauty. And that was one of the happiest times in my life. So I thought, I love beauty. And back in the day, there wasn't a lot. There were five of the big brands that we know now. There wasn't all the niche brands that we have.
Mhm.
And everything in beauty looked very basic. So you had brands coming up with a basic cleanser, a moisturizer, and a serum.
Mm.
And no name, just the brand name and moisturizer. So I
Yep.
thought there must be something more exciting that we can do. And I got the idea of coming up with ingredient-led products, and also targeted treatments to specific skin concerns, offering something that was very specific to your skin type, to your concerns, rather than one product fits all. And back in the day, there was nothing like that. So
Mm.
I thought about the idea, and the first thing that I did, there's a trade show in Italy. It's called Cosmoprof,
Mm.
and that's where everyone in beauty goes. And you can find manufacturers, you can find designers, lab, you can find all the resources. So I went there. I booked a flight and a ticket.
Mm.
And I took a carry-on, and I literally was walking for 48 hours, taking leaflets, speaking to people, having meetings. And I brought it all back to London. And then I sat down and I said, okay, I have this idea. I met all those amazing people and resources. And I screened out my top three, and I started making calls and setting up meetings to put together what would my resources be so I can start my business. So
Mm.
that's how it all started. And I did my
Wow.
own research and was ready to go.
Incredible. What did that formulating process look like, and the R&D process for that first skincare line? I know a lot of research went into it yourself, but also maybe any advisors that came in to help with the formulation. I'm curious.
Yes, so that was the most important thing for me. So at that trade show, I met with a few labs, and my point of view was always the marketing point of view. So I want this product to reduce your fine lines, improve your pigmentation, and tighten up your skin. Let's say that's a brief. But I didn't know what ingredients that I was going to use. So after meeting with a few different labs, I found one that I felt we were very much aligned, and it's a lab we still work together 25 years later. So what we did is I give the brief of the marketing result, and then the lab puts together a formula and also shares with me all the different ingredients that go in it. I read about the ingredients. I read about the clinical results that they can bring on the table. Try the product, share it with people around me to get feedback, and go back and forth. Usually, a formulation that goes well can be approved within 3 to 4 months. Sometimes it can take a couple of years to get it right.
Yep.
So for me, the most important thing was getting the right lab, and we did that. And then within a year, I've had my first products, and I was ready to launch.
Mm. So at launch then, this is really the early 2000s. What did that rollout look like? Was there local retail stores, or what were those first opportunities to hit your market?
Well, first of all, let me share something with you that I
Yep.
started the business without external investment.
Mm.
I tried to get investment, but back in the day, beauty companies weren't sexy.
Yeah.
It wasn't an industry that people believed in, and I was a girl just fired from her banking job. I certainly did not have the credentials to start my own beauty range. So, I wasn't able to convince anyone this was going to be any good.
Mm.
So, despite not getting investment, I decided to do it all myself. And I had savings of around $20,000 for my days in banking. And, 25 years ago, $20,000, was a good chunk of money to help me get started.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, and when you don't have investment, it's not just about the money. Sometimes you have people around you who, from the investor team, that can advise you or open doors for you. And I didn't have that. I had to open all the doors myself. So I remember I did do a lab production. So I had some products, and I hired a PR agency to start creating some traction on the brand. And with those products and a little bit of PR that we generated, I was knocking on doors and going into retailers to show them my product.
Mm.
So I went everywhere. Harrods, Selfridges here in the UK, Space NK, and
Mhm.
there was a store called Phoenix, which is a tiny store next to a Vogue magazine.
Mhm.
And I went there, showed her my products, the buyer, and I think she took pity on me and said, well, okay, you have 4 products. I'm going to give you a tiny shelf, but you have to come to the store every Saturday and Sunday and sell your products.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, yes, I love this. And so, yeah, I was running the business from my back room at home, Monday to Friday. And then the weekends, I would go to the store to sell my products, tell the story, and also just to really get feedback from customers because we
Yeah.
didn't have online back in the day. So it was all done in the stores. So getting that feedback and having that connection with our customer was really important. So
Yeah.
that's how it all started, one woman show.
Mm. So at start, did you partner with a 3PL, or were these made by yourself? I'm curious, that first line of products, what did that look like for production?
So there's the lab and then there's the contract manufacturer. So after I established my relationship with the lab, um, I was looking for a contract manufacturer that can do the quantities that I needed. I think that the challenge that we had at the time was I only wanted to do 500 to 1,000 pieces per product, and a lot of the good manufacturers, they need you to be doing 5,000 pieces or 10,000 pieces, minimum
Yep.
order quantities. So anyway, in the UK, we have quite good manufacturers within the skincare industry. So I managed to find a company that would do those small quantities. And at the beginning, I was ordering around 500 pieces per product, and I was storing it all at home. I was doing the shipping myself, and we only moved to a 3PL warehouse a little bit later on. So when we started getting bigger orders, and when it just wasn't possible for me to be packing and shipping anymore. So we
Yep.
moved there. It was probably another couple of years before we did
Mm. Yeah. So I love the part of the story where you're at the store selling the product yourself, getting direct feedback. I'm curious, what did that opportunity lead to for maybe expansion into new stores or maybe getting that product feedback from customers to find out what they were wanting at that time? What did that lead to ultimately?
So it was great to go to more stores and say, we're at Phoenix, we've been there for a while, these are the sales that we're achieving, and sharing the success story with other stores that I wanted to get in. The challenge with getting into more stores is not that they don't want you, but they already have a store full of products.
Mm,
So it's all about the timing. It's all about the store having space for your products, but also needing the assortment that you can bring on the table that's
yep.
not competitive with something else they already have. Now every year I remember putting together beautiful gift boxes and printing out all the press that we received and sending products to all the buyers, all the usual suspects. And every year I was getting probably more no's than yeses.
Mm,
But I persevered, I kept being positive, and it took me about 5 years, but then I was in every retailer here in the UK.
mm,
But with stores, it takes time, and you can't take anything personally. Just it's the right timing most of the
yeah,
time.
love it. So at what point then did you have the opportunity to scale team wise? So I know you eventually transitioned to a 3PL. You were doing a lot manually yourself, but what were those first hires and what would you say were those critical positions?
The first hire was a sales director.
Mm,
And I brought her in at a time that I couldn't even afford her.
mm,
But for me, the core of everything we do is sales.
yeah.
And it's having someone out there introducing the brand to new accounts and taking care of the existing accounts and making sure we have the sell through. So for me, always the sales piece was the one I was investing in. And then the second big hire was initially was an accountant who was coming from day one and doing 2 days a month and doing all my accounting for the
Mm,
business. But then slowly we started working so well together that she started coming in more days and she became the operations director. So she started to do a few other elements of the business, and she was really good. So took on the operational piece. So for me, the at the beginning of my journey, the two, three things that I needed was commercial, operations, and part of it, accounting.
yep. At that time, I mean, early 2000s, what forms of marketing would you say you guys were using that were most effective before any socials or online targeting? What did that look like? I'm curious.
It was very old school PR
Yeah.
mainly. And that's why there were so many PR agencies out there. And it's all about getting a strong PR agency to put your products in front of the press. There were a lot more magazines back in the day as
Yeah.
well. Everyone was reading magazines because there was no social media, there was no other way to inform yourself. But
Mm,
then the other thing we did was we connected very early on with the celebrity world.
yeah.
That means agents, publicists, makeup artists, stylists. So what we were doing is sending tons of products to those people, hoping they would give it one of their clients,
Mm,
and that one of the celebrities would mention it in one of their press interviews. And what we were lucky with was that let's say a celebrity does an interview and they represent a big brand. When they do the interview, they ask them, you have to mention one product that is not part of your campaign. And because our products have all these amazing names that we can talk about them later on, such as snake, serum, and dragon's blood,
yeah.
they were very memorable. And so celebrities would mention them and we would get press hits on
Mm.
on magazines, and that's how in the first few years we got traction.
Wow. So what did those relationships look like with like celebrities mentioning it in the press? I know it's such a different dynamic than today. Was this all pretty much organic and really sending in-kind product?
It was 100% organic. We didn't pay anyone at all. And this is a time, you have to remember, social media wasn't available. So celebrities did not have a
Yeah.
platform to get paid to promote products. So everything was organic
Mhm.
until it wasn't.
Wow. Incredible. So mentioning some of those iconic names, like when celebrities would mention a name and it sticks out, what was that first line? It was Snake, if I'm right, correct?
Yeah, so it was snake serum, and what happened that year was we got a call from one of the companies that was organizing an Oscar after party, and they wanted to include snake serum in their goodie bag. And they wanted a very big quantity. They wanted 5,000 pieces, which for me, back in the day, it was a massive number. It was my year's production.
Yeah.
So it was a big risk. For all I know, you can send 5,000 pieces to LA and then nothing happens. And all you've done, you've just wasted a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
But we did that. And that year, it was one of the most attended Oscars and the party afterwards, and we had everyone from Jennifer Lopez to Jennifer Aniston to Angelina Jolie. All those classic Hollywood celebrities were there. They
Mhm.
all got the snake serum. And over the next 6 months, we got a lot of press hits on the back of that. Even
Wow.
Tom Cruise used it, and he mentioned it on one of his articles. So um, for me, it was the perseverance and taking the risk of sending all these products over to Hollywood and being lucky at the same time. And these were some of the things we were doing back in the day for marketing.
Yeah. Can you recall maybe like any big spike that some of those in-kind donations have brought? I know it's probably very like a domino effect as it continues to
Yeah.
as you pass them out, but I'm
So
curious.
one of the celebrities here who's used snake serum back in the day was Victoria Beckham, and it was documented in all the press. And that between that and then some of the Hollywood celebrities talking about it around the same time, we got starting to get calls from Japan, from Australia, from Germany, and it was that effect, that um, amplifying effect of seeing this crazy product called snake serum. And the name had a lot to do with it because everyone remembered the name. And suddenly it became viral. And I remember we launched in Germany. They wanted 10,000 snake serums, which, we
Mm.
struggled to get, but we got the product. And then they were so excited with it that when they had the product, they had some display on the cash point. They bought plastic snakes and you wouldn't do that in 2024, but
Yeah.
today they use some crazy marketing techniques to talk about the snake serum. I mean, that was a moment of virality when we didn't have social media, and
Yeah.
it was insane. But I want to say that taking the risk and naming snake serum instead of just calling it an anti-aging serum, it's the single product that put Rodial on the map.
For sure. Do you remember what point you guys eventually switched over to e-commerce and launching on your site? I feel like this is a massive shift that probably allowed you to expand globally. I'm curious what point you think that was at.
Um, so it was probably, so we've been around for 25 years, and it was probably year 10. So I want to say about 2010.
Yeah.
Um, so, but you have to remember, we were all set up to be a wholesale brand.
Yeah.
So we would come to the office every morning thinking, can we get into more stores?
Mhm.
Can we drive the sell-through into our existing stores? And that has always been the way we're operating. And
Yep.
The time that things have changed was during COVID,
Mm.
when suddenly all the stores were closed and we had to operate in a different way. And that was the time that we took e-commerce seriously, and I have to be honest with you. So it was always there, but
For
during
sure.
COVID, we really took it seriously. We replatformed, we hired a different team, we got a whole bunch of agencies to support on, we started doing paid social, which we were only doing organic until that point.
Mm.
And that was the moment, and we've had the most amazing year. And that's the moment when we realized, well, we can actually drive our own business. We don't need to depend on third-party stores.
Yeah.
So that was the pivotal moment from us, and we haven't gone back. So
Mm.
now our e-commerce is a big part of our business.
Love it. Getting into, yeah, kind of that the COVID years there, I know you guys also had a lot of success organically outside of paid. So talking on TikTok and one of your products, the banana load lighter, what impact did that have on the TikTok community? And I know that grew your following pretty extensive. So what did that content look like to build that?
So when everything shut down, I had the team come to me and say, Maria, we want you to do tutorials. And
Mm.
I am a business person. I'm not a blogger. So before COVID, I wasn't even talking to camera. I love Instagram and I was very creative with it, but I never
Yeah.
really did any tutorials before. So suddenly, here we are during COVID, and I'm putting the camera in front of the phone and trying to do some basic tutorials using our products. And one of the products that I loved using is our banana low lighter. Just because, when you put it on camera or when you're on a Zoom call, it gives you that under-eye brightening effect.
Mhm.
And that resonated with a lot of our followers, and everyone started getting hold of it. And the beauty of Banana Lowlighter is that at the time when the stores were closed and no one could go to a store and get shade matched for a concealer, you get this one product that fits all skin tones and gives you this brightening effect that is very, very noticeable on camera.
Mm.
And suddenly we got influencers buying it. We weren't even sending it to them, and starting using it,
Yeah.
starting using it on tutorials and talking about it. And again, for me, the product was amazing, and it was that moment in time that everyone discovered the beauty of Banana Lowlighter compared to any other concealer, and how easy it was to use and get hold of, that made the product viral. And within a couple of years, we sold about 1 million of those
Wow.
banana love lighters. It went crazy. It's still constantly viral on TikTok, and people of all ages talk. But that's the beauty of it, that you have 18-year-olds talking about it and 65-year-olds talking about it, because
Mm.
it's such a versatile product. Um, so again, it's the combination of a great product and timing.
Yeah. Incredible. I mean, taking all this experience from launching early 2000s, then going into more digital landscape into now, I know you had the opportunity to go into Dragon's Den, which is I would love to get into as well. Dragon's Den Greece in 2022. And how did that opportunity come to arise? I'm curious.
Um, so I've been in talks with the Dragons Den. Let me start again. So
Yep.
I've been in talks with the Dragons Den UK team before the pandemic, and I met with them, and they were super interested. But then COVID happened, and they stopped filming, and I lost interest as well. I just became a lot more insular, and I just wanted to run my business and nothing else.
Mm.
But then summer of 2022, I get a call from the CEO of Antenna, which is one of the Greek TV channels. And he said, we are starting Dragon's Den here in Greece. Would you be interested? And my initial reaction was to say no, because I live in the UK, my business is in the UK. We didn't have massive business in Greece, even though I'm originally from there. There wasn't anything business
Mhm.
happening on Rodial that was interesting.
Yep.
And I said no at the beginning. And then we go back home and I discussed this with my husband, and he said, you were interested. You love the show. I mean, as a family, we will sit down and watch every single episode of Shark Tank in the US, which I love, and the equivalent here in the UK, Dragon's Den. You love that show. There was a point you were passionate in doing it, and now you have an opportunity. It's in a different country, but like you should say yes and just try to figure it out. So it was my husband who convinced me, and he promised
Mm.
to take care of the business while I was away filming. So I went in not knowing what the experience would be. And I've done 2 seasons. We're going to start filming season 3 in a couple of months.
Wow.
And it was the best experience ever on so many levels. And that's why, I say when I speak, sometimes say yes to opportunities and figure it out later.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out how to film when my business, when my life is in London, UK, and be in Greece and do the filming and keeping it all together. So
Mm.
I figured out, I was doing back and forth for 5 weeks, and that worked fine. But then the experience of being there and being on the other side, I've always been the entrepreneur, but being on the
Mm.
chair and sitting down and listening to young entrepreneurs with great ideas, and some not so great.
Yeah.
Not everyone has great ideas, and some of them were pretty out there, crazy. But for me, having that experience and being able to work with young entrepreneurs and relive that journey that I lived myself 25 years ago, and be able to mentor and be able to help and open doors for them, I found that this is such an invigorating experience for me that
Mm.
makes me go back to work, and I'm a different person. Because
Yeah.
as much as I help them, I also gain all this young energy and fresh energy of a startup. So
Love it.
I'm thrilled. It's been a great experience.
Incredible. Yeah, those here in the US who might know Shark Tank, and I know Dragon's Den is a pretty large franchise. What does that relationship look like once you do make an investment, like on the show? From your point of view, what does that look like with some of the entrepreneurs?
What we do is we have a monthly Zoom where we go through plans, successes, challenges, and that's more of a structured call that we do once a month.
Hmm.
Um, all my investments are in Greece, so whenever I go, I try to go and see them. So we have face-to-face meetings a couple of times a year. We talk about the bigger projects and the future. But then I'm also available. They can call me at any time. We speak if they have a quick question, or if there's anything that's challenging them and they need a quick answer, I'm there for them. So it's a very friendly and informal relationship, and it seems to be working very well.
Incredible. Well, I do like to conclude each episode with this. Such an amazing story so far. But if you can share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would you say that would be?
For me, the number one piece of advice is say yes to opportunities. 100%. I actually need to write a book. I've written 3 books.
Mm.
My first one is called How to Be an Overnight Success, and you cannot be an overnight success, but
Yeah.
I've proved that. But then going back to the advice, say yes to opportunities and figure it out later. For me, what I've regretted is the opportunities that I didn't take
Mm.
because I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I couldn't make it work. And I had fear and self doubt. And I've learned over the years that a lot of opportunities come your way to grow you, to challenge you, to make you a better person.
Mm.
And so say yes, because I say nothing exciting happens from sitting at your sofa and being comfortable in your sweatpants.
Yeah,
Put yourself out there, even if you feel it's not the perfect moment, and say yes and pursue any opportunity that comes your way.
I love it. Well, Maria, thank you so much for joining me today. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Rodial at rodial.com.